It's 4:30 here in Beijing. In Germany, I wish you a good morning and a good afternoon for the people in China. My name is Jürgen Ritter. I'm the director of the Sino-German Agriculture Center. And we are very glad to have the 10th edition of our DCZ Talks today. Let me give a short introduction. Taking stock China's agricultural progress under the 14th five-year plan, that is the topic of today's talk. Just recently in October, the fourth plenary session of the 20th Central Committee of the CPC issued the recommendations for formulating the 15th five-year plan. These recommendations are then expected to be elaborated and passed next year in March by the National People's Congress. I remember times when in the West this was not much of a news. Foreign five-year plans often were regarded as little more than a bureaucratic exercise of the Central Committee. By now it is understood that these 5-year plans lay out a strategic outline for development in the coming years, which deserve more attention, since they affect not only domestic policies, but also are of global importance. It appeared to be a good opportunity for us to take stock of the still valid 5-year plan 2021 to 25, the 14th five-year plan, and compare the formulated objectives with the present state of implementation. We are very glad and honored that Professor Xia agreed to take on this task and share her research results today with us. Also putting this into the context of 5-year plans in general and providing us with some insight into the process of how 5-year plans are formulated. Professor Xia Fang is professor at the College of Economics and Management in the China Agricultural University. She received her PhD in agricultural economics from the Michigan State University and has a long list of expert publications. We have met actually just recently when you contributed to our Sino-German Agricultural Week in September with an excellent presentation on low carbon transformation of agri-food systems and rural revitalization. The presentation, by the way, is available for download on our DCZ website under the column of events and Sino-German Agriculture Week. Now we welcome Professor Xia and are looking forward to your presentation, Progress and Outcomes, China's Agricultural and Rural Modernization during the 14th five-year plan.
Thank you, Yugen, for introducing me. And thanks a lot for inviting me to give this talk. This year is the last year of China's 14th five-year plan. And last week, the recommendations for formulating the 15th five-year plan were made public. So I think this is a very good time to review the progress and the outcomes we have achieved during the 14th five-year plan. And since I'm an agricultural economist, and I think our audience is primarily from the agricultural sector, so I will focus on the sustainable development of agriculture and the rural areas. Before discussing the 14th five-year plan targets in details, let me first give a short introduction of the system. China's five-year plan is a very comprehensive framework to outline the national economic and social development over the next 5 years, serving as a core tool of national governance and the development strategy. It sets main goals, define directions, identifies key tasks, and implements a series of projections and initiatives for national and local developments. Since the inception of the first five-year plan from 1953 to 1957, this system has continued to the present, becoming a guide for driving China's national economic and social progress. So let's use the 14th five-year plan as an example to illustrate the system a little bit. As I mentioned at the very beginning, the recommendations for the 15th five-year plan were made public in less a week in late October. So when we look at the 14th five-year plan periods, actually the recommendations was also released in October. These recommendations establish the basic principles, the main goals, and the major strategic tasks for the plan period. They create the fundamental guidance for formulating the national development plan. And half a year later, in March 2021, the outline of the 14th five-year plan was reviewed and adopted by the National People's Congress. This translates the party's recommendations into an actionable agenda. Following these specialized plans would be released by different government departments, and together with the outline of the 14th five-year plan, these documents form a multi-level and interconnected national development strategy system. Specialized plans issued by different government departments such as agriculture, science and technology, and education. They aim to elaborate, quantify, and implement the overarching national goals within their respective fields. And for example, in the agricultural sector, we are particularly interested in the State Council released the 14th five-year plan for promoting agriculture and rural modernization in November 2021. So the agriculture sector is a sector within the national economy, but it also includes a lot of subsectors. So the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs, I will abbreviate as MARA, issued a lot of sector-specific plans covering crop farming, livestock, and fishery. It also issued supporting area plans targeting various technologies such as mechanization and informatization. Also, the plan from other departments can support the rural development and agriculture mechanizations. For example, the 15th five-year plan for national water security issued by the National Development and Reform Commission and the Ministry of Water Resources. It promotes the water conservation and efficiency enhancement in agriculture. So far, I have used the 14th five-year plan as an example to illustrate the timeline and specialize the plans under this system. Now, since the recommendations for the 15th five-year plan were made public, we can also roughly compare the recommendations with those in the 14th five-year plan in terms of the items related to agriculture and rural modernization. There are 4 items in the recommendations for the 14th five-year plan, 3 in the 15th five-year plan. And the first 2 items are quite comparable and similar, with one focus on agricultural production capacity, quality, and efficiency, and the other focus on rural construction, as is to improve the living and working environment in rural areas. In the recommendations for the 14th five-year plan, there is an independent item focusing on poverty alleviation. And since this work has been institutionalized and moved into a regular mechanism in the recommendations for the 15th year plan, it has been incorporated with other policies in the third items. And we can also compare the sub items between the 2 periods a little bit. In the recommendations for the 14th five-year plan, it highlighted the deepening of rural reforms, particularly the rural land system reforms. And in the recommendations for the 15th five-year plan, it highlights to increase the effectiveness of various policies. Regarding the land system reforms, there is a move from policy design in the recommendations for the 14th five-year plan to efficient utilization in the recommendations for the 15th five-year plan. In the 14th five-year plan, the work on farmland focused on extending the second round of land contracts upon their expiration, and the work on rural collective construction land was mainly for piloting market access, and the work on rural homesteads was mainly for exploring implementation forms for the three rights separation. Since the reforms has already created the foundation in the recommendations for the 15th five-year plan, the work shifts toward efficient utilization of various types of rural land. And in the recommendations for the 15th five-year plan, there are more policies, more diversified policies. The first key area is to establish a diversified investment framework, not only guaranteed by public finance, but also encouraging social engagement. And food security will be also strengthened from the production to the circulation. For farmers, we will explore combined policies related to pricing, subsidies, and insurance. And this may be partially supported by innovative compensation mechanisms that highlights the interest distribution between the consumption and the production areas. For the circulation, the recommendations highlights the management of purchase, sale, and reserves. And for imports, the recommendations emphasizes diversification of agricultural product imports and the coordination between international markets and the domestic production. Finally, in terms of the mobility of productive factors between the urban and the rural areas, the recommendations encourage the talents to find opportunities in the rural areas. So, so far, I have given an overview of the five-year plan system, and now let's zoom in to investigate the agriculture and rural modernization during the 14th five-year plan periods to see whether the targets set in 2021 have already been achieved. And firstly, I will investigate the major plan, the 14th five-year plan for promoting agriculture and rural modernization, but I will not go into details for the sector-specific plans and the supporting area plans. But instead, I will also investigate the 14th five-year plan for national agricultural green development. You may know that I didn't mention such a plan earlier when I reviewed the system. That is because this is the first national document dedicated specifically to agricultural green development. And although the concept agricultural green development has been mentioned and highlighted in previous policies, a comprehensive document dedicated to it was lacking before this document. And besides these two documents, since I need to identify a central thread for my presentation, and I have settled on agricultural green development, I will also review two other documents issued during the 14th five-year plan periods. One is the implementation plan for emission reduction and carbon sequestration in agricultural and rural areas, and the other is for the action plan for methane emission control. The former provides technical and policy roadmap to implement national dual carbon goals in agriculture and rural areas, detailing measures for emission reduction and carbon sequestration. And the latter is a targeted control plan for methane emissions, providing specific management and mitigation measures. So let's first look at the 14th five-year plan for promoting agricultural and rural modernization. There are 7 main objectives and 17 main indicators. Please note that the document does not explicitly group these 17 indicators. I personally categorize the 17 main indicators and each of the objectives. And let's look at the 7 main objectives. They are focused on the supply for major agricultural products, agricultural quality, efficiency, and competitiveness, rural infrastructure construction, rural ecological environment, rural governance capacity, rural residents' income, and poverty alleviation. I need data to assess the progress and the achievement I will use or rely on official statistics released by different and relevant government departments, such as the National Bureau of Statistics, MARA, and the National Health Commission. This statistical data can also be found in statistical yearbook, but often with a 1-year lag. So for example, the latest statistical yearbook you can find on the NBS website is the 2024 statistical yearbook, which reports the 2023 data. The other relevant data question is whether I have data sources beyond the official statistics. As an economist, I'd say that will be very difficult because we are trying to evaluate a very comprehensive set of national level indicators. We sometimes conduct surveys for specific research questions, but those surveys rarely cover indicators that do not exactly match the study's focus. And representative national surveys also require very careful sample design. Expanding the questionnaires or sample sizes quickly increases our cost and time. So what makes things more complicated is that smallholders are no longer the only actors in China's agricultural modernization. For example, large farms and professional service providers are growing in importance. Professional service providers are now play a very important role in agricultural mechanizations in China. So traditional service that only interview smallholders cannot capture the full picture. So let's get back to the official statistics. According to this released data, I would conclude that many targets have already been achieved, and other indicator targets are very likely to be achieved by the end of the 14th five-year plan periods. The indicators including grain production capacity, total meat output, the mechanization rate, the share of villages with access to hard service road, the rural tap water penetration rate, the rural schools with full-time teachers with bachelor degrees and above, and the share of licensed doctors among rural doctors, and the growth rates of rural per capita income. These indicators targets have already been achieved. And for the indicators, including the contribution of agricultural science technology provides, the high standard farmland areas, the utilization rate of livestock and poultry waste, the pass rate in routine monitoring of agricultural product quality and safety, the processing industry output, the share of villages with collective operating income larger than 50,000 renminbi yuan, and the share of education, culture, and entertainment in rural consumption. Their targets are very likely to be achieved by the end of the year, because here we are reviewing data in 2024 or even earlier, and the value are already very close to the 2025 target values. So I only don't have data, national data for two indicators. One is the share of civilized village, and the other is the share of townships with comprehensive elder care institutions. But for the latter, China Philanthropy Research Institute at the Beijing Normal University provides some provincial level data. According to their report, a lot of provinces have already achieved the 2025 target values. So I can conclude from there, at least the indicators target has already been partially achieved. Next, we will proceed to the 14th five-year plan for national agricultural green development. This document has a very similar structure to the modernization plan we just reviewed, and there are 5 major objectives and 11 major indicators. Again, I personally categorized the 11 indicators under each of the objectives. Let's first look at the 5 objectives. They focus on resource utilization, efficiency, environmental quality of production areas, agricultural ecosystem, the supply of green products, and the emission reduction and carbon sequestration capacity. I will also use the official statistics to illustrate the progress and the achievements They are also from different government departments such as MARA and the Ministry of Water Resources. Based on the statistics, some of the indicators targets have already been achieved, and some are very likely to be achieved by the end of the year. The indicators including the effective utilization coefficient of irrigation water in farmland, the utilization rate of crop residues, the recycling rate of waste agricultural film, the newly added area of black soil protection and utilization in Northeast China, and the number of certified green, organic, and geographic indication agricultural products. The targets have already been achieved, and the indicators including fertilizer and pesticide utilization rate of livestock and poultry waste, and the pass rate in routine monitoring of agricultural product quality and safety. The targets are very likely to be achieved by the end of the year because we are reviewing using data in 2024 or earlier, and the value are already very close to the 2025 target values. And you may note that some of the indicators listed here are exactly the same as what we have already reviewed in the modernization plan. So next, we will move to the implementation plan for emission reduction and carbon sequestration in agriculture and rural areas. In this document, there are no strict numerical targets. It only identifies key tasks. The first two key tasks are for crop farming and the animal husbandry, respectively. And you may note I highlight something. These tasks are related to the indicators we reviewed earlier. For example, the key tasks include to optimize irrigation management in paddy fields, to improve nitrogen fertilizer use efficiency, and to improve livestock manure resource utilization. These key tasks are related to the indicators we listed here, like the effective utilization coefficient of irrigation water, the utilization rate of livestock and poultry waste, and the fertilizer utilization rate. Since we have already known these targets either have already been achieved or are very likely to be achieved, I won't repeat again. But I do want to provide more evidence to show how these achievements were made. I will use statistical data from China Agricultural Machinery Industry Yearbook, which reports the ownership of agricultural machine in China. Many types of agricultural machinery can improve resource use efficiency, so their adoption provides very useful evidence of the progress. Let's first look at the figures here. This is the growth rate of the ownership for irrigation machines, and the blue line indicates the growth rate for the ownership of traditional water pumps, and the green line indicates the ownership growth rate for water-saving irrigation machine. And we can see the growth rate for the water-saving facilities is faster than the traditional water pumps. So I can imagine that in the field, there were more and more water-saving facility used during the 14th five-year plan periods. And similarly, to the right, this figure is for the growth rate of the ownership of tilling and fertilizing seeder. This machine can improve the efficiency of fertilizer application, which potentially contributes to a higher fertilizer utilization rate. And across the year and during the 14th five-year plan periods, we see positive growth rates, meaning more and more such machines were used in the field, potentially contributing to a higher level of fertilizer utilization rate. And if we look at the two figures, I note that actually the growth occurred earlier than the 14th five-year plan periods. This suggests that there are some policy coherence or consistency over different 5-year plan periods, and the adoption of technologies and investment kept growing across the different 5-year plan periods. So finally, let's look at the growth rate of the ownership for equipment for resource utilization of livestock and poultry manure. And this growth rate shows here suggests a positive over the entire, not the entire, over years and during the 14th 5-year plan periods. That means in the field there should be more and more such equipments used during the 14th 5-year plan periods. And we can note that there is a jump in the growth rate in 2021. This is the first year of the 14th 5-year plan periods, meaning maybe these tasks become more and more important during the 14th 5-year plan periods than earlier. So next, let's zoom out to the key tasks. And the third one is the fishery, is related to the fishery development. I don't highlight any tasks here because I cannot find an indicator in the plans related to these tasks. So I try to use the statistical data from the China Fisheries, that is yearbook, to illustrate the progress of the plans. First, let's look at this figure. This is for the rice fish farming production in freshwater aquaculture production. The rice fish farming is a model recommended by this implementation plan. So the blue bars indicate the absolute output, and the green line indicates the share of rice fish farming production in the total fresh aquaculture production. Both of them increase dramatically over years and during the 14th 5-year plan periods, reflecting the progress of the plan. And in the bottom, there are two very similar figures. One is for freshwater aquaculture and the other is for mariculture. These two figures both illustrate the development of the industry farming production. This is also a model recommended by the implementation plan. And again, the green bars indicate the absolute output, and the the blue lines indicates the share of the industry farming quantity production to the total production. And consistent with earlier finding, we find no matter we look at the absolute output or the share or its share, there is an increasing trend reflecting some progress of the implementation plan. And I also want to discuss briefly a little bit about the fishery carbon sinks. Carbon sequestration here comes from seawater aquaculture, mainly shellfish and algae, which absorb carbon during growth and store it in shells and bodies, forming blue carbon sinks. Compared with traditional forestry carbon sinks, blue carbon is a more recent pilot in China. In 2023, Lianjiang County in Fuzhou City in Fujian province issued the first nationally recognized marine fishery carbon credit to a local company. And this converts the carbon sequestration value of seawater aquaculture into a market tradable asset. And Lianjiang actually has achieved several firsts before this, including to establish the first county level blue carbon trading platform. Next, we will look at the key tasks related to farmland and agricultural machine upgrading. And here we have a task correlated with the earlier indicator we reviewed. That is the utilization rate of crop residue. We know these targets have already been achieved. So I still want to use more statistical data from the China agricultural machinery industry yearbook to illustrate the underlying progress. And we can first look at the growth rates of the ownership of the stock crushing and distributing machines. This machine can help to promote the utilization of crop residues, and we can see over time and during the 14th five-year plan periods, the growth rates are all positive, implying there are more machines were used in the field. And of course, if we look at the earlier years, the growth started earlier than the 14th five-year plan periods. And I can also show a consistent pattern here in terms of the growth rate of the ownership of agricultural aircraft. I try to use this ownership to indicate the upgrading of agricultural machinery because the aircraft is powered by electricity, a relatively more clean energy. And we see over years the growth rates are positive, and so a lot of the aircrafts have been used in the field, and also the growth actually occurred earlier in the 14th five-year plan periods. While the agricultural aircraft is powered by electricity, but it's still a relatively high technology thing, so cannot capture the full picture of electrification of agricultural machinery in China. So this figure, I try to use another indicators to illustrate the progress. This is the quantity of the electric motor power, and we see over years during the 15th five-year plan periods, the quantity steady, there is a steady growth. But if we look at the share of the electric motor power to the total motor power, actually there is a decline indicated by the blue lines. This is not a very surprising finding because firstly, agricultural mechanization in China has progressed very quickly. And second, electric motor has many limitations in practice compared to traditional technologies powered by diesel or oil. So I think there maybe need more innovations here in the future. And lastly, let's look at the key areas in terms of renewable energy substitution. From the macro level, I see rural households in China use less firewood and coal for cooking and more gas for cooking during the 14th five-year plan periods. Though the gas is fossil-based, it emits less. And these data are from the China Family Panel studies conducted by the Peking University. I like macro energy data separately for the rural and urban areas. So I have to report the national average. This data are from the International Energy Agency. So the basic conclusion is the renewable energy become very important during the 14th five-year plan periods, and its share in total electricity generation grew very fast. And its share in the total domestic energy production grew not that fast, but still kept growing. And when we zoom into the renewable sector, we will see the wind and solar PV absolutely contributed most. So the last document I will review is the action plan for methane emission control. These documents actually have key objectives, links from the 14th five-year plan to the 15th five-year plan. And in the 14th five-year plan periods, the key objectives was to establish the framework, and in the 14th five-year plan, the key objectives are to refine and improve the framework. And the target sectors are agriculture and waste management in the 15th five-year plan, and in the 15th five-year plan, the energy sector is also included. In the agriculture sector, there are three main areas: manure management, enteric fermentation, and the rice cultivation. There are very few numeric targets. The only exception is the utilization rate of livestock and the poultry waste we have already reviewed earlier. And since there are just the soft targets or key tasks, I try to use the IFOL data to show the methane emissions from these three activities. Originally, I tried to show the emission intensity, which is the total emission divided by the area harvested for the rice cultivation, because the harvest areas can change over time. And I think the intensity can reflect the technology progress more precisely. But I found the IFO methodology actually assume constant emission intensity over time. So we get a horizontal line here. So we have to rely on the total methane emissions. And we can see during the 14th 5 years plan periods, there is a very significant reduction in methane emissions from rice cultivation. And for the animal sectors, we can see there is an increasing trend in terms of the emission from the anaerobic and enteric fermentation. And for the emissions from the manure management, it tends to be flat and constant in recent years during the 14th 5 years plan periods. So let me wrap up. And from the above analysis, I would say nearly all published indicators show very satisfactory progress. Some of the targets have already been achieved, and some of them are very likely to be achieved by the end of the year. And I think two factors are very important to the achievement. One is the policy coherence. For example, we see the methane emission can show action plan links the objectives from the 14th 5 year plan to the 15th 5 year plan. I didn't review the outline for the 13th 5 year plan, but if you read the outline, you will find there are very similar or the exactly same indicators in that document to the document in the 14th outlines. And I think the cross-planning approach can maintain a policy coherence. The second thing is there is a consistent and continuing technology adoption. If you still remember, for example, the ownership of water-saving irrigation facilities, the growth rate actually appeared before the 14th 5 year plan period. So cross-cycle funding can ensure stability and reduce the implementation risks. And finally, since we end up with a methane emission reduction action, and I also want to end up with my presentation with some mechanisms for emission reductions, I think the policy signals point to expanded use of market mechanizations for emission reductions. In this August, the General Office of the CPC Central Committee and the General Office of the State Council issued the opinions on advancing green and low carbon transition and strengthening the national carbon market. This document emphasized to diversify the carbon products and also to diversify the carbon trading entities. The document does not explicitly mention the agriculture sector, but I hope China's agriculture and rural modernization can also benefit from such market mechanizations in the future. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you for your listening.
Thank you very much, Professor Xia. This was an information-loaded presentation, very interesting. And of course, we still have time for questions. I first ask if there's any questions here in the room or also online. My colleague Ahmed-Jan will check the online questions. Otherwise, if there's nothing right now, then I would start. Or is there anything online question? Not yet. Then I would just start. Again, it is a load of information which we need to digest here. For me, the interesting part is also how these different 5 year plans actually are coordinated so that they are actually also moving in the same direction. There's this overall 5-year plan, and then you have all the different specific 5-year plans, even then sometimes a 5-year plan which is drafted by several institutions together, like you're shown in this agriculture green development. Yeah. So is there an agency, so to say, that checks actually do these different corporate 5-year plans actually are they coordinated in a way?
I think because the specialized plan issued by different government departments, they are under the framework of there is the state council, right? So I think they can be coordinated with each other. And for the consistency or coherence of different 5-year plans over periods, like from the 13th 5-year plan periods to the 14th 5-year plan periods, if you read the documents, actually there are some very consistent details, like the direction are the same and the indicators are same. They just set higher value, meaning the policy, they are very constant over time. I think this makes its implication more trackable and easier, I think.
But isn't it surprising then, because in the process, actually the central committee or a special institution within that collects loads of recommendations from all different sides, which is then included, or after, of course, sorting them out in the recommendations for the 5-year plan. And these ideas, they come from all different sides, so from party institutions as well as from civil society, etc. So there could be actually a diversity also then at provincial level, for example, with the specialization of these respective 5-year plans. So there is the central level. Could it be formulated in this way? The central level makes sure that these different 5-year plans also are consistent with each other from the 14th to the 15th, but also within the let's say the hierarchy of the central level to the lower levels.
I think there is a discussion before the release of the outline of the 14th, 15th 5-year plan. Like there is like in this period after the recommendations for formulating the 15th 5-year plan were made public, then we go to a process that like different social society and the different departments, they try to discuss different things to express their views. And I didn't mention this process in my presentation, but it was there. And after that, the State Council will propose the outline for the 5-year plan, and then the National People's Congress will review it and adopt it. So I think you just mentioned a very key step that I just skipped in my presentation, which includes the voice from different areas.
I think this is an interesting point because especially from the outside, we often do not see how comprehensive the whole process of formulating a 5-year plan actually is, and also what comes out of a 5-year plan, and again goes back into the different levels of administration, but also partly into civil society. So it's a huge process, which is not only a centralized, let's say, addition of a plan or of a document. And I think you mentioned that, and that's I think a very interesting point which we need to take into consideration. What we have not discussed, I think, but this is something possibly for the future, is I think there's also then the possibility for provincial level administration to specify within the 5-year plans their respective focus. So this is another level which is also then makes it even more comprehensive and complicated.
Yes, sure.
Is there any question here?
Yes, yes, there is. Just let me get to it. I will read it for you, okay? First from Jerry, Professor Xia, what are the major challenges in the upcoming 15th five-year plan period? I will read it for you. Upcoming 15th five-year period from the agriculture and rural development perspective.
Sorry.
So the question is, what are the main challenges for the upcoming 15th five-year period for the agriculture?
So this very big question for me because I'm still very junior, right? So I just discussed something that related to my own research. I think for the agricultural green development, we need to include the smallholders. They are the one who practice in the field. They need to adopt the technology. They need to follow what the scientists or the government tell them to do. What is the practice thing to enhance the productivity and at the same time to protect the environment. But for the smallholders, their interest is economic benefits. So how to include them, to incentivize them to adopt the green technology is a very important challenge in the field. And that's why at the end of my presentation, I highlight the market mechanizations because the financing is also an issue. We cannot always rely on the public finance. We want to encourage or engage more social capitals in this process. And I think if we have enough finance, then we can like to encourage the smallholders to adopt the green technology. This is what I'm thinking.
Yes, we have more questions. Michaela, would you like to ask your question or I just read it? Michaela, and yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Professor Fang. It was great to listen to your presentation.
Open your mic. Yes.
It's opened. No, I don't know what it is. Then you do
Then
it.
I will read the
Sorry.
question, okay?
Yeah.
Then
Okay.
So Michaela's question is first, do you expect there will be follow-up to the green development plan? Do you think there would be follow-up?
I think so. I think since they already made the first one during the 14th five-year plan, I expect there will be next one in the 15th five-year plan.
Yes, and second question, the previous Green Agricultural Development Plan did not include concrete targets for emission reduction or carbon sequestration. Do you expect the next version to include more specific or binding targets in these areas?
I don't think so because firstly, actually, if you look at the dual carbon targets, agriculture is not the most important sector, I should say. The energy sector, the manufacturing sector, they emit more than the agricultural sector. So this is not the most important areas for the dual carbon targets. And secondly, the emission reduction in the agriculture sector is very complicated, as I just mentioned. To achieve it, you need to make sure the farmers, they adopt the technology. They are very small scale, not like the factory. They have the big scale and you can monitor them very well. But for the smallholders, you can it's very hard to monitor their behaviors. So how to find a smart way to encourage them to adopt the green technology and to this is very important for the emission reduction and carbon sequestration in the agriculture sector. And I think methodologically or technologically speaking, this is not very mature in the agriculture sector. That's why I think there wouldn't be very strict demanding in this sector.
Yeah, thank you. Next questions come from Huidi Ma, and the question is, we are facing various unforeseen challenges brought by climate change and uncertain future and post-pandemic era. Although China's grain production has increased year by year, from the perspective of preventing problems before they occur, what specific support policies and incentive measures will be included in 15th five-year agricultural plan related to policies to promote alternative food systems such as food self-provisioning and box planting and others? Additionally, in terms of scientific research, have there been any project approvals for cooperative initiatives focusing on microsystems in agriculture and food?
So it's a very long question.
Yeah.
It's
But
there-
let me summarize, maybe it's very,
It is like you want green development, you want food security, there are some
What-
kind of trade-off.
yes, let me rephrase, like simplify. What specific support policies and incentive measures will be included in the new plan related to promote alternative food systems?
I I actually don't know what to say. This is a very big question for me to expect what will be the policies in the 15th five-years plan. As I said, I'm still very junior, started to
No,
take the task as your
Yes.
I think what needs to be emphasized is we do not have a 15th five-year plan yet. These are recommendations which are now being discussed for half a year within specific expert groups, etc. So what comes out of that, nobody can tell yet, I would say. There is clear indication, etc., but it is by no means decided that what is written now in the recommendations is also then the final five-year plan. So what possibly exactly that question is being raised,
Yes.
how to promote alternative food systems, etc., and is being discussed. We don't know. These are rather closed door discussions as far as I know.
Yeah. Yes, and I think in the new meeting we had like a week ago, they give only general like instruction for overall economic development, but I think they are formulating sector specific plans. I think it is going to come out next year.
Yes, and much later. I think you mentioned it in on one of the slides. When the five-year plan is passed in March, then it takes another half year or so until the specific sector-specific five-year plans appear. That means that is a year from now when we possibly can expect that kind of agricultural specific plans. And for me, the interesting part in your presentation is that it's not only five-year plans of, let's say, bureaucratic elite or bureaucratic hierarchy, but it's also five-year plans like from CAS, the Chinese Academy of Agricultural Sciences, etc., even other institutions, then accordingly draft these kinds of five-year plans. And that's how it spreads actually, and also goes deeper into the specific areas.
We have more question in the text box. I will read it later, but Pentao has one.
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. So as I read this five-year plan. So I think the highest priority, I mean, perhaps is the food security.
Yeah, this
right?
is one.
But for sure, your study area, I understand, is green technology, green development, yeah. But for the food security, I think there's many indicators are missing if you consider the food security. You know, for example, the land price, the food price, or the damage by disasters. You know, all those indicators actually are missing in the 5 years plan. You know, if we really evaluate the food security, I know you evaluate like the production, right, capacity, you know, every year increase. But there's many factors related, which is missing information for me, I think. Just to use example, for example, I come from Shanghai. The land price in Shanghai is very high. If we calculate by euro per hectare, this would be like 2,300 euro per hectare, which is extremely high. If I compare in Bavaria, the land price, the arable land price is 800 euro to 1,000 euro per hectare. So that make, for our agricultural goods, competitiveness is very, very low because of our land price is high, And also another way, like subsidies, in Europe, many farmers rely on subsidies, 200 euro per hectare if you grow crops. But here, there's no data about the subsidies, which is very, very important thing to make sure the farmer has incentive for producing food, So I feel this is a lot of things, that's just my opinion, actually missing in the indicator, which maybe the academia can provide recommendation to the government. There's many things are missing, That's just my comment.
Okay, thank you. And I think, I should say, we don't have such indicators in our plan, but I think there may be a different case, because I think the land in China, they cannot convert like from the farmland to construction land that easily, right? So we have to guarantee the farmland is the farmland, and even the high quality farmland is high quality farmland. That's why I think the land price increase driven by the industry development cannot be affect the farmland price that much. That's one reason I think why the land price is now there, because we guarantee the land supply for crop farming, right? And for the food price, I think also we try to make the food price constant in China. Like we have the how to say in English, 菜篮子工程, the vegetable baskets, right? This is to guarantee the supply of the vegetables, and not only the vegetable, but also meat and other agricultural products. So I think that's why the government focuses more on other indicators rather than the price itself, because they have already tried to guarantee the supply of agricultural products and the baseline productive factors like land.
Yes. Shall we get back to the more questions from the... Next question comes from our former colleague, Eva Steinfeld, and her question is, how are the impacts of COVID crisis reflected in the ag statistics? So how the COVID-19 pandemic impacted reaching those goals in 14th five-year plan?
The COVID is COVID-19, right?
Yes, the pandemic. So there was lockdown, and we know agriculture is also impacted, but we don't know how it impacted statistics. We know the overall agricultural, at least as far as I know, grain production did not decrease. But what about the other?
Yeah, I believe there should be some impact there, but since I haven't conducted such a research, so I just look at the official statistic data. So probably I don't have a very clear answer. So this may need.
Well, from your statistics and from the presentation, we just can conclude that it did not have much of an impact because, as you said, most of the indicators actually have been achieved or are nearly achieved. So,
or maybe we can say, because I use the most recent data, right? Like in 2024. But if you look at earlier data, like 2020 or 2021, maybe you can observe some impacts. So I should have a time series rather than just give you the most recent data to answer this question.
Yes. Thank you. Next question comes from Chiara Bartoletti, and the question is, one of the difficulties I encounter when analyzing reading policies, governmental plan is understanding how guidelines and objectives are actually put into practice at the smallholder level. Your presentation was very helpful in this regard as it provided quantitative evidence to assess these goals. So thank you. However, there are some terms that I would like to ask if you could clarify them. What does it mean by social engagement for diversified investment framework? How are the civilized villages defined? Are there differences in policies and objectives between coastal areas and central and western rural regions, in China? And finally, why have some targets data been unreported or remained unavailable?
For the data issue, I would say I don't know. I just tried my best to find the data for each of the indicators to make everything clear. And for the social engagement, right? For the
there was
finance.
A question for definition of there was two terms you mentioned. One is civilized village. What is civilized village? So you can define what it is.
Civilized village is like this is a thing like we do not only focus on production or income. They want to like have more culture thing. Like we have indicator to show the share of village, the share of education, entertainment, and the culture spends in your total consumption. Such thing is like we try to have something beyond just income. We want to see whether the villagers in the rural areas, they have a better culture life, I should say. Sorry for my English. You have more place to go in your leisure time, maybe just do sports or such things.
Yes, or cinema.
Civilized, maybe they have other things like.
Oh, well, the Chinese term "wenming" is from a wenming to the wenming, you have the whole spectrum of civilization. It's very difficult.
And also like how you deal with your waste is like they collected.
But it could actually comprise everything, the little things like infrastructure, like public toilets, like kitchens, etc., up to, as you say, cultural life, schools, etc. All of that just means, in the end, it means to have villages, to live them closer to urban life.
Yeah, that's a very good definition.
So in the end, this is the revitalization or the rural development program to lift them out of that so-called countryside mythos. Also.
Next question comes from our previous questioner, Hui Ma, and her again. She wants to re-clarify his or her question. How should one approach my question? Please address the speaker. Thank you. Carbon reduction initiative require the participation of all citizens, and the significance of growing one's own vegetables should be fully recognized. So she wants to say that the government initiatives also should consider people growing their own vegetables or like having their own garden. So there's my understanding from these questions.
This is the carbon sequestration?
Yeah, significance. No, so she wants to know whether government should have some incentive policies to incentivize people to grow their own food or own vegetables. Do you think that kind of initiatives would be included in 15th five-year plan? And this person thinks it should.
I think this will be very difficult in practice, because it's like you can imagine how to make a very strict binding targets for such things. It's like you can invest some money to encourage people to do so, but you cannot monitor the behaviors very well. You cannot monitor the farmers' behavior very well. To say I just grow something in my garden is very hard to track their behaviors.
I even assume that this kind of specific policies could be actually a matter for regional authorities, which then support specific areas, and not so much, let's say, the general framework, because this. We all know China is huge, the regional diversity is huge. That means one plan does not cover all regions. That's why the different regions and provinces have to specify plans for specific policies. So this could be, for example, something for a specific region where they say, here we support this and that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of Chinese policies actually started from some pilots in the regional level, right? There are a lot of smart people in the field. They can find smart ways. Maybe I cannot imagine in my office.
Yeah, this is actually an important point because in the West, very often people think that China is a very centralized, organized country.
Sometimes the pilots are from the field.
The biggest changes all came from down there. Village elections, the household responsibility system, all of these big changes came actually from below, and then were promoted later on as nationwide. So I think the interesting part is then also how these kind of developments from the basis are taken up by a central level plan in the end, and that's why I just read that figure, and I'm not sure if this is true. There were 1 million or so recommendations for the 15th five-year plan, and then they selected, I don't know, 1,000 or 2,000. So just to imagine what kind of a wealth of information actually is collected before this actually enters then into a plan. So back to that question, maybe it would be good to have that kind of a recommendation somewhere.
Yes, I have my own question. So we talk about general agriculture and rural development. So what do you think about nutrition? I think because now China become much more affluent, so people eat more meat, so it puts pressure on the land, and then also China has to import a lot of soybeans and corn. So do you think in a new agricultural related policies, they will also emphasize more on nutrition so that people eat healthy, more vegetables or oriented food? So of course, eating a lot of meat also can cause health problems, right? Like heart disease or cardiovascular disease. So do you think there would be some kind of policies to incentivize more healthy eating or producing more healthy vegetarian or vegetable oriented food? Do you think they would also consider these nutritional aspects?
Actually, I also want to ask a question. Do you have any such subsidies or incentives in Germany?
In Germany?
To help people to change their diets? Because in China, I think basically the policy is try to guide people to adapt this healthy diets. They cannot force people to do so.
Right.
So that's the National Health Commission. They made a lot of plans to tell people you should eat what kind of diets, but just a guide. Recommendations.
Beat me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's a subsidy. But of course, they introduced some kind of nutrition quality codes, A, B, C, D, etc. So if I buy crisps, for example, well, they are not nutritious. I like them. But for example, other food, then you have a high, let's say an A or a B, and you see that is more nutritious. And so this was introduced a couple of years ago or some years ago. how much this is then taken up by the consumers is up to them more or less.
Yeah.
I don't think that there is any subsidies to really. Well, there is an interesting figure that actually prices between vegetarian food and meat are getting closer or are almost the same now. Whereas before that, the vegetarian food was much more expensive. So there is a market development, I think, more than well, let's say through governmental subsidies. Do you know anything about that?
Not to my knowledge that there are
Yeah.
specific subsidies in the recommendations, but I'm somewhat doubtful to what extent these recommendations are also influenced by lobbyists. So when I buy food, I also always look, is it A, B, C, or D? But I like salmon, it's always rated at C or D.
Mhm.
So it doesn't give you a guidance in that sense that you say, if I only buy food which is labeled A or B, I have a healthy diet. That might not be the case, but it's just my opinion. I did do any research on this, of course.
It was necessary partly, of course, because, for example, the same food or appearing to be the same food sometimes has different quality levels.
Yeah.
Because there's more sugar in there or there's less sugar in there. So this might be helpful for consumers to compare them. Yeah.
Yes, and I think two other things may be important. One is to make some regional specific recommendations to make the diet's recommendation more consistent with the regional preference for foods. And the other is we are already trying to diversify our food supply, right? We already try to supply you this one, that one, and just.
But I think
yeah.
my opinion is, of course, government cannot change the private behaviors of consumers, especially of adults. But I think the government also have strong food assistance programs and school lunch and like school meal programs. And I think in that case, and all these schools are government or publicly run, right? They can decide what kind of food they can offer at least to children, or hospitals can decide.
Yeah.
But of course, private consumers can buy and eat whatever they want. But
then the price then is of
Yeah.
course important. Yeah.
Yes.
I was astonished to read that let's say a vegetarian something is much more expensive than meat. Yeah.
Yes.
And now this becomes more or less equal. Yeah. So if meat is cheaper than the same thing as vegetable, then many people will not change to be vegetarian. Yeah? So the price for the consumer is then of course of importance. Still, as you say, like food assistance programs, that's one way to steer into one direction.
Yeah.
And I think then the children, possibly Fang Xia mentioned that
Yes.
last time, the children then go home and educate their parents on what to eat and how to eat.
Right, yes. And they also eat these things, so they are exposed less to unhealthy fast food and whatnot.
Yeah.
Are there more questions there?
On the chat, no. No, I think yes, I think so. And there's no question.
Maybe one main thought. If I look at the different stages of year plans, 5-year plans, of course, it's very much dedicated to domestic development and how do we want to create a strong agriculture or economy. But they are also, of course, in the context of a global development. And I'm not sure if it's true, but it seems that in the 14th 5-year plan, food security was much more emphasized again as a national security issue than before. Yeah. Also because of the global implications or to be self-subsistent, etc. To be sure that at least the main part of food production needs to happen in China, needs to be guaranteed. Yeah. Also because of, let's say, these trade issues, etc., which were an international issue. Is that a observation which you would share, or is that something which we read into that plan?
In the 14th five-year.
14th five-year plan, that's what I read, that in the 14th five-year plan, it's food security became much more a point of emphasis as a national security issue than before. It always was a big
But I
issue.
thought it was always a national security
Mhm.
issue.
Yeah, all right. So you wouldn't think that this is also a reaction to the global developments?
Yeah, of course it's,
It is.
yeah.
Mhm. Okay.
There is one more question. I'm sorry to interrupt. I think this is from Jen. Thanks a lot, Professor Xia Fang, for the presentation. I learned a lot from the talk and the discussion. In the presentation, you mentioned positive growth rates in terms of ownership of agricultural aircraft. Maybe it's drone. I'm wondering, what is the source of statistics? Where does the specific data come from?
It's from the China Agricultural Machine Industry Status Yearbook.
Okay, okay, so it's come from China Agri-Machinery Statistical
Yes,
Yearbook.
yeah.
And over the previous questioner, Hui Ma, was, I saw in European supermarket that food safety labels have 5 levels. The higher the level, the more expensive the product is. However, even lower level food standard labels are certified by state and ensure food safety. Will China have such food standard labels in the next 5 years? Food safety labeling standards.
In the recommendations, I didn't read such things, but as in the 14th five-year plan, the food safety stuff was there, and I think maybe in the outline of the 15th five-year plan, in the end, there may be something related to that. What do you think?
I think the tendency, I mean, if you look back, first of all, it was important to ensure that everybody has access to food, yeah. And now the tendency is, of course, much more, not only quantity but also quality in the different sections. So food safety is, of course, also a big issue within the quality sector. So I think that is certainly, I'm not sure how they formulate that in the five-year plan, then, but it certainly is a topic which is addressed.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think.
Ahmed already
That's
shows us a QR code.
Yes.
Which we hope some people could fill in, and helps us then to get some feedback and to improve whatever is necessary to improve. So please, if you find a few minutes and can scan that code, let us know the feedback.
Yes. And I have one last question. My own question is, what do you think about the social issues like aging, rural residents, welfare, like whether they will be integrated to national pension or healthcare reform system? What do you think will happen in this area?
So for the rural residents' welfare, actually, I think they are improving.
Yeah.
Right? They did more, like to the pension started to cover the rural areas and
Farmers.
the medical care.
Healthcare.
And they also highlight the civil life of the village. So what is your specific question here?
So you think these systems will be,
I think they will.
you imagine it would be further improved?
Yes,
and there will be more targets.
Yeah.
This area.
And like Yugen said, maybe they try to raise the level to the urban residents level.
Okay.
And for the outer issue, this is, I think, is a very important thing, and they try to increase the elderly care institutions in the 14th five-year plan already, and I think they will keep going, and there will be a lot of investment in Medicare, medicine, and the healthcare stuff.
Maybe some kind of a final question almost. When these objectives are formulated in the five-year plan or in the subsequent five-year plans, promotion of these objectives is of course key, but do they put money to that, to, let's say, subsidize specific areas? And where does the money come from? Does that come from then a ministry, like Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs? Or is it, or both possibly, is it provincial money? Because some provinces want to promote specific targets within their own region or so. Do you know anything about these subsidies?
I don't know. I'm not an expert.
I'm not sure if they are.
Because this is like an intersection between agriculture sector and other sector,
Yeah.
Yes,
like
rural
public
development.
health. Yeah, and yeah, I know very little about this, so I don't want to make a conclusion or something like that. Yeah.
Possibly it's a mix, yeah.
Yeah.
So some subsidies come from the Ministry of Finance, but some subsidies obviously also from other sources, also provincial level sources, etc. Well, I thank you very much. If there's no further question, then I just quickly summarize. As I said, I had the privilege to read the presentation beforehand. Could digest already a little bit of the information. It's incredibly rich, and I thank you very much for this really diligent summary of how this work plans, how these 5-year plans actually are put together, and what is included and what is achieved. You used a lot of different sources to actually verify the statistics. This is often a question in the West, how reliable are these sources and how reliable are statistics, etc. Well, this is what is available as a wide spectrum. And as you said, some statistics are only available as governmental statistics. So thank you very much for all this great work. And I hope that we can stay in touch for follow-up issues with the 5-year plans and others. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for all people who shared and attended this webinar. We have no plan yet for the next one, but please check your mailboxes when there's the DCZ Talks number 11 coming up. You will find some information and announcements there. Thank you very much.